elements: people, process, and technology. In a spyware case, we're talking about, having inadequate technology to deal with a threat and everything else. But, if I educate my people and I have maybe defined processes and everything else, I can do a better job in combating the spyware menace within my environment versus adopting or, installing new technologies. And so that just goes back to the question. I'm not going to hire an entity that compromises that people element that I mentioned there.
In the back in green.
Yeah, sort of related to this, there's a comment earlier about finding the difficulty of chasing down spyware, and hey, call it in, phone call the FTC, call the FBI. 2 or 3 years ago, certainly what I was hearing was the last thing that most IT or corporate executives wanted to do was get the feds involved. They were worried that this was going to leak out, there may be publicity about it, and over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more legislation about if there's disclosure of private information, has to be notified to users. So now I'm an IT guy, and I have this box that I'm ready to put in the closet, maybe reiterate. If I call, it might be really helpful for Gerhard to find out that this may be a new form of spyware that hasn't been seen before. On the other hand, if there's any kind of interaction with law enforcement or something like that, do we expose our organization to some of these other types of legislation liability? Is there any kind of discussion about a safe harbor or something like that for people that would encourage people to cooperate?
Is Jerry Dixon here actually right now, or I don't? You over there? Do you want to wait to? Do you want to take this now, or do you want to?
I'll touch on else for the second.
Okay. He's with the Department of Homeland Security, and so there actually has been some legislation that has passed over time to try and help companies share information. But let's take it from the FTC's perspective for now, and then we'll let Jerry talk more generally about the government, the rest of the government.
Well, the issue that you really touch on is data security more than spyware, although spyware can compromise the security of data and personally identifiable information. And where the liability can arise on your side or on the part of the private sector is where there is personally identifiable information, sensitive information on the system, and the system operator has failed to take reasonable and appropriate steps to safeguard that personally identifiable information. What constitutes reasonable and appropriate steps really varies from case to case. It's a flexible standard, but that's the standard that the FTC has adopted under our statutory authority, and when we've sued in cases where there have been data breaches, it's been for failure to have in place reasonable and appropriate measures to safeguard data. If you're thinking about getting in touch with us to report a spyware problem or a hacking problem or something that's happened, and you've got reasonable and appropriate measures in place, then you shouldn't have a problem. You shouldn't be afraid to get in touch with us. If you've had a data breach and you didn't have those kinds of procedures in place, you may wind up on the other end of an enforcement action, but it would still be, we're likely to find out about it anyway. So, you might as well let us know. And we'll work out the terms of the order, but, we could also, and you may mitigate in some way the nature of the remedies sought. No promises.
We've had some companies come to us, to CDT, and we've kind of been a middleman. We've served as a middleman in some cases where we've independently researched the same things that the companies have been finding and been able to, and given that information over to the FTC and others as completely independent research that we've done, just using the same set of research. So that's another way of going about it.
No, I enjoy the comment and the feedback, though. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that I, as an organization, potentially, go to the FTC, whomever, and I want to ensure that my organization's privacy is safeguarded and everything, but maybe I'm not as diligent as I should have been. And now, so you flip the angle around a little bit. Instead of helping me solve what my problem is now I face prosecution and other things like that. And so I mean, I don't necessarily think that model works well.
Well, we are not here to help you solve your problem. We're here to enforce the law, and we're here to understand what's going on in the marketplace that may violate the law. So if you're, I mean, the FTC does not exist to help individual consumers solve their problems or, you know, network operators to solve their problems. We exist to enforce the Federal Trade Commission's prohibition on deceptive and unfair practices.
I'll also
in
say
commerce.
that I know for a fact, because I've been CC'd on some of these, that the FTC gets quite a lot of anonymous tips as well for people out there. You want to follow up on that? Or?
I'd like to follow up
Okay.
on that last specific thing. I understand the FTC is not here to help us solve our problems. That's sort of our job here. It's just, the concern is there's this gray area. What do you mean by reasonable, you know, was I taking care of things the way I should? And when I go talk to my corporate general counsel, that's an area that I'm a little uncomfortable with right now. And so, as everybody starts sort of moving towards the extreme ends of that, just stepping back to the technologist role, it would, Gerhard's life would be easier if I go towards the share the most amount of information possible, because that will help us as an industry ratchet the level of security up. What I'm afraid is that all our corporate general counsels are going to suggest that we move away from that and share as little as possible with Gerhard, because we don't really know where we are as far as this whole, you know, potential liability thing.
There does seem to be a fairly inexorable push towards centralized analysis of vulnerability data. From what goes back to Microsoft through their online crash analysis to what goes around just random, like all the antivirus software, or much of it, is starting to go ahead and put things back. Gerhard, I'm sure your software does reporting back to what it's finding. If you don't have that, you're right, you don't get a global view. I mean, the definitive quote is, you can't manage what you can't measure. And without global measurement, there's no global management. I do agree, though, it does seem to be problematic if by participating in this system that is making the internet more secure, you're opening yourself up to point source risk. That's a problem. I mean, that's something that your lawyers can just be like, you know what? It becomes almost like a tragedy of the commons. You know, this may be a good thing for everyone, but if, you know, we can get prosecution over a particular thing that is in this data, we shouldn't give it out.
And we probably have a little bit of an unfair advantage here, because this is part of our business, finding those pieces of new malware, and we are working with the authorities pretty much on an ongoing basis. If we find something new, it's no problem from our end to work with them, because there's nothing on our end. It's usually something that we get reported from the outside or find through our research system anyway. So we're very open about that, and we have actually a very good relationship with those folks in terms of getting it shut down if needed.
You've been the person in the back there. It's Hudson.
Yeah, I heard the 80% figure quoted a little while back. When you go to the reputable end of the anti-spyware market and take their test tools and run them, it comes up and says no infected file found, no infected machine found, one found 35 cookies. You are infected with spyware. So the question for the panel: do you consider cookies and the presence of cookies as spyware? And if not, do you consider this a deceptive marketing practice on behalf of the companies trying to float these tools?
I'll start by saying that tracking cookies do show up in the Anti-Spyware Coalition definition of spyware, but I'll just point people to that definition. But if I was wondering if you, I mean, maybe Gerhard can answer.
By design, my slides excluded cookies today.
I agree. Cookies are probably the single most overrated security threat that we've seen in the last 10 years. That being said, it is worth recognizing that web applications are a different application sphere than what is on the desktop, and that certain uses of cookies, especially if you have an individual site that you go to that gets personally identifiable information, and then that personally identifiable information is retransmitted to every other site you go that has a tracking cookie. You know what? I have a hard time honestly not calling that, and I'm one of the stronger people who hate calling cookies a security threat. Even I got to admit, if If I can go to a random site and it can tell me exactly who I am because 4 months ago I went to some other site and I told it, okay, that's a problem.
And that's pretty much the definition of tracking cookie in the anti-spyware coalition definitions. Let's see if we can get one more question in. Last question.
There's a lot of discussion about the legal limitations for prosecution. So what is on the horizon to try to change that, to strengthen the laws to make it easier? Are we seeing that trend on a national or on a state-by-state basis?
I'm probably the best person to answer this on the panel. So the national, state by state, we've seen a number of laws pass. In fact, Louisiana just passed another one, and so I don't know what and I think there are a couple more under consideration, so I don't know what the total current number is at the states. Most of those state laws don't really go beyond what's already illegal in most under current consumer protection law in the states, but some of them do raise the penalties in the states. And so you have seen some cases brought under the under the spyware law, most notably, and again, this is in the full enforcement cases there, if you want to look at the state laws. Texas's Attorney General has brought a case under their spyware law against Sony, and is continuing that lawsuit, although the other ones are settled. So that's an interesting one that's out there. On the state, on the federal level, there are a number of bills that are out there that do different things. The House has passed 2 bills, actually. One that would require notice for ads and the type of ads that you see from software and certain types of tracking, and would raise the penalties and give the FTC civil enforcement penalties, which is that they could get more than just the ill-gotten gains. They can get actual amount of the actual amount that the bad guys made off of. I mean, beyond that, they get an actual number. Fine, like $11,000 per incident kind of thing. And then Senate bill, which is similar to that, has passed out of committee, but is probably not going to the floor this year. And since it's going to be the end of the Congress, and you're unlikely to see the two come together, although it's still a small possibility, but it will probably have to start all over from scratch next year, unless something can be worked out between the House version and the Senate version. And then also the other House bill is a criminal bill that would criminalize. A lot of this is already criminal under sorry, I'm blanking here, Elaine. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Thank you. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and so this adds on a couple new pieces to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Well, I want to thank the panel. Does anyone have any last comments? I want to thank the panel, and we're going to break, and then we'll come back and talk about the future, where things are going, etc. Well, we're going to start up again. I'm sure that people will be coming in as we go along here, but I wanted to make sure that we have a larger panel and make sure that everyone has time to give their points, and we can get an active discussion like we did in the last session. The first speaker that we're going to have is John Heisman, who's a consultant the principal security consultant at NGS. John.
Good afternoon, everybody.
One second. And just as a reminder, I'm not giving everyone's bios out again. They're in your books, so I'm just going to announce who the person is so you can look up the bio. Thank you, John.
So the first point on my notes here, I was going to talk about increasing rootkit-like technology in spyware. But actually, before I talk about that, I want to go through the process